It is time to face the music. Today we're going to be cooking with a healthy ingredient which is loved the world over. However, it's always been something that I have personally loathed and despised. For today, the time has come, and I'm going to be cooking with It's hot in here, isn't it? Today I'm going to be cooking with... I'm going to try and get through this. Today I'm going to be cooking with... Today, I'm going to be cooking with peas. To the kitchen scrap, where I'm currently challenging myself to learn to survive on British WW2 rations for an entire year.
Oh, I doubt there is a way to achieve that.
How are we all feeling this week so far? I don't know why, but for some reason this week I've been hit with a number of sometimes euphoric waves of nostalgia, mostly relating to some happy childhood memories. And while indulging in these memories, I decided to revisit one of my all-time favorite childhood films, which was Bedknobs and Broomsticks, starring none other than Dame Angela Lansbury. Now, spoiler alert if you haven't seen it, but when I was a kid, I was far too young to fully comprehend and truly appreciate what was actually happening in the film, because it's set in 1940s wartime Britain, in particular during the Blitz, when lots of children and women were being evacuated from these city centres to go and live with complete strangers out in the country, which of course actually happened. Now, Angela Lansbury's character had to take some of these children in, which of course she did, but begrudgingly. But the reason was she was actually an apprentice witch, trying to master her craft to help the war effort and defeat the Nazis. Genius! My favourite part was always the end. Remember when they're hiding out in the castle and she finally casts the substitutionary locomotion spell, which brings inanimate objects to life.
Traguna, Macoides, Tricorum, Satis,
So all the medieval armour and the weapons become reanimated and they defeat the Nazis. So I've been having a grand old time rocking out to the soundtrack as well. I just love it. Anyways, I just wanted to share that with you, so let's crack on with the third installment of
Wartime Breakfast, Lunch and Dinner.
Morning's here, morning is...
Stop it! I will kill you.
Don't you just love the mornings? I'm on my second cup of tea, it's gonna be okay. Now, shout out to my friend Holly, who actually got me onto today's wartime breakfast recipe. Hey girl. And it's kind of a strange one, so of course, we have to try it. For today's breakfast, we're going to be making mock fish. Now, Holly originally sent me a YouTube video for this recipe, which I'll link below. Her channel is called Courtney Historical Cooking Experiments. It's a great video, go check it out, but she does link the original recipe that she was using, which came from a wartimekitchen.com, which is actually the recipe that I'm going to be referencing, as it requires the fish fillets to be coated in breadcrumb, whereas in Courtney's video, she actually coats her fillets in a tempura batter, which would be quite delicious, but I'm going to stick with the breadcrumbs because I also found another recipe for mock fish on Utility Jude's channel, which is slightly different, so I thought, why not try both? Now, I'm sure a lot of you will already know who Utility Jude is, but she also creates wartime cooking videos for YouTube. Fabulous channel, very informative. I'll link her video down below as well. Now, since I started this little series, I've been trying to carefully plan out my menus each week just to make sure that I don't go over my weekly rations. However, this week I've come dangerously close. In fact, I think by the time I finished cooking everything this week, I would have technically gone over my milk ration, which was 3 pints a week. Part of it is poor planning on my part. However, it probably would have been okay had I not decided to cook this additional fish recipe. So at this stage, I've already filmed the lunch recipe, which chewed up a lot of my milk ration. And last week, I officially ran out of milk powder. I bought a 1 kilo bag in January and it lasted me almost an entire 7 months, which I actually think is pretty good. But yes, going through both of these mock fish recipes, I realized I was going to have to buy some more milk powder stat. So that's what I've done, and we don't really need that much. Anyways, let's crack on with the first mock fish recipe. So the first one is the one that Courtney covered in her video, which comes from the wartimekitchen.com. For this recipe, you will need half a pint of whole milk, 2 ounces of ground rice, 1 teaspoon of chopped onion or leek, margarine or butter if your ration allows. I'm completely out of margarine after cooking lunch, so butter it is. And you will also need some anchovy paste or essence. Now, I don't have any anchovy paste, but remember last week when we made the baked stuffed potatoes with sardines and I reserved the oil? This is why I was thinking ahead. So it's all congealed, but I think we have enough to cover both mock fish recipes, which will double both as the fat content needed for each recipe and the fish flavoring. So nothing has gone to waste. And last but not least, you will also need 1 egg, either fresh or reconstituted. I'm just going to use fresh because that's what I have. Now, both of these recipes also suggest serving this with some parsley sauce. So we're going to make some of that as well. I've also got a head of broccoli that I need to use up, so I'm just going to steam that and serve it on the side, just to add a little bit of freshness and greenery. I'm excited to try both of these recipes. I think it's something a little bit different. So let's get cooking. Now, both recipes call for ground rice, not rice flour, just ground rice. So one of them calls for 2 ounces and the other only calls for ½ an ounce. So I figured I may as well just blend it all at the same time. So this is 2½ ounces here. Now I'm guessing they used a mortar and pestle to do this back in the day, but I don't have one. So we're just going to use a modern invention to achieve this because it is the 90s after all. Hopefully this works. And give it a blitz. Okay, that actually took longer than I expected. I don't know if you can see that, but it's still a little bit chunky, but there is a fine rice powder underneath all of that. Now, something Courtney mentioned in her video is that she'd wish she'd kept it a little bit chunkier to kind of simulate the flakiness of the fish once it's cooked. So I think I'm just gonna call this done and see how we go. Next, we need to boil this in some milk. So I've just mixed up some milk powder and I'm bringing that to the boil. But in Courtney's video, she ended up having to add some extra milk to cook the rice. And at this stage, I feel like I'm pushing my luck as it is with the milk. So I've just got some water on standby just in case. This was the jug that I mixed the milk powder in, which is why it's cloudy. So the milk's just starting to come up to the boil now, and I've just turned the heat down a little bit. Next, we have to shower in 2 ounces of ground rice. So I do want to reserve about ½ an ounce. I'm just eyeballing it. It's going to be fine. Let's give this a bit of a stir. Next, we have to add in a teaspoon of chopped onion or leek. Now, I was so excited this week because I got to buy an onion. I've already used half of it in my lunch recipe, and I just diced up the rest. So put in a healthy teaspoon of chopped onion. Just make sure none of that rice is sticking to the bottom. And this is also the point where you would add your butter and anchovy paste. So I'm just going to put in half of the sardine oil. We'll save the rest for the next recipe. Keep stirring. That smells fishy. It's definitely thickening up, which is great. This recipe actually doesn't call for salt and pepper, so I'm just gonna let the sardine oil do the talking. Now we're actually supposed to boil this for 20 minutes, but as you can see, it's thickened up quite a lot in just a few minutes. I think this is why Courtney ended up adding the extra milk. I'm just gonna add a dash of water here. I've also got this on a very low heat. It smells good though. Okay, it's been about 15 minutes. I'm calling this done. I can't really feel any chunky bits of rice in there. It hasn't really made a lot, has it? Now once the heat is off, we're supposed to mix through a well-beaten egg. There they're going. And while I still haven't tried this, and there's still a way to go, I'm not sure if this is something I would have wanted to have blown my weekly egg ration on. I don't know. We might be calling it too soon, but we'll see. All right, next step. So next we're supposed to spread it out onto a plate and then let it cool down. Now I did end up adding an extra 80 mils of water to this, and I'm wondering now if that was a good idea or not. It does seem a little bit runny since we've added the egg, but I'm hoping it'll stick together well once we refrigerate it. I'm just gonna spread this out a little bit. It's a little bit like a scrambled egg pancake at the moment. I'm just gonna whack this in the fridge and then we'll make our parsley sauce. Okay, so the sauce recipe is quite simple. It's actually just the same recipe that we used for the mustard sauce last week, except this time I'm gonna put parsley in it instead. Although I will be trying a different white sauce recipe in the lunch segment. So I've just melted an ounce of real butter, which means I only have 1 ounce left for the rest of the week. Chucking in an ounce of flour. This is just wholemeal. Give that a stir. I feel like I've been making a lot of sauces recently. ½ a pint of milk powder that I just mixed up. I'm just gonna add a little bit now. God, that was thirsty. Add a little bit more. It's safe to add the rest now. Just making sure I get all the lumps out and let it thicken up. All right, that's thickened up quite nicely. Next, I'm just gonna add some salt, pepper, and about a tablespoon of chopped parsley. Done. Just give it a quick taste test. That's really nice, but I think it'll be even better tomorrow when the parsley flavor really kicks in. Okay, so I already grated and browned my breadcrumbs in the oven a bit earlier, and I've just taken this out of the fridge, but guys, it's still super sticky and wet, and I'm not sure if this is gonna hold its shape very well. I think things are about to get ugly. I'm worried that I didn't cook it for long enough. I only did 15 minutes instead of the recommended 20. I don't even know how I'm gonna get this off the plate. I'm supposed to shape it into fish fillets, brush it with a little milk, crumb it, then pan fry it. Yeah, I'm just gonna try and divide this into 2 as best as I can. I don't know, guys. Yeah, see what's happening? I don't think I need to brush this with milk. I think my best bet right now is to just dump it into the breadcrumbs and hope for the best. What a freaking mess. All right. Oh my god. Guess I'm just gonna do this. Just try and really make sure that it's covered, smothered, and whatevered. Right. Hope for the best here. Oh, this is just gonna fall apart. Should I just chop it down the middle and make two? Just to make it easier to handle? Doctor it up a little bit. Ugh. I feel like this was a disaster. I mean, yeah. Let's see if I can get this other mess on there. Plop it down. Okay, two takeaways here. Number one, I should have just trusted the recipe, cooked it for the full 20 minutes, and not added that extra 80 mils of water or however much it was. In saying that, as finicky as these turned out to be, the game's not over yet. We still have to pan fry these. I'm getting hungry too. Right, I'm just gonna divide this again. Okay, so we got 4 little fish fillets out of that. I'm gonna save these for the next batch. I do have some more breadcrumbs. I probably used about 1/3 of a wartime loaf. That was just from the bread we made last week. Okay, let's see if we can successfully fry these now. Okay, so I've just been heating up some oil in the pan. Let's try and get one of these in there. Oh God. Please stay together. They're so delicate. Now we're just gonna play a patient waiting game. So let's see if we can just... Okay, that turned out all right, but this one feels like it's gonna fall to pieces. It didn't! All right. Okay, these weren't a total disaster, but this seems like an awful lot of effort to go to for breakfast. But you know what, I guess back then, after years and years of rationing, they just wanted to come up with new and exciting ways to kind of break up the monotony. I think this is actually gonna taste pretty good. I'm really surprised that this one stayed together. 1, 2... Okay, unfortunately, we did have a casualty. It's my own fault, I tried to flip it too soon. But 3 out of 4 ain't bad, so this can just be the one that we taste test first. I've just whacked on the broccoli, so as soon as that's done, we can give these a whirl. Okay, we have ourselves a little serving here. We've got our mock fish fillet, a bit of broccoli, and some parsley sauce. Let's just try a piece of the fillet on its own. That's actually quite nice. It does remind me of a fish fillet. I'd say it's more akin to one of the oven-baked fish fillets that you would get in a box. The rice has been cooked all the way through, which is great. Let's try it with some parsley sauce. Oh yeah, that's where it's at. With the sauce, that is delicious. I always get excited when I have an opportunity to have something fried living on wartime rations. I need it in my mouth right now. That is so good. But was it worth the effort? I can't actually decide yet. The sardine flavor is very faint. It's barely detectable. So I would like to try this at some stage with the anchovy essence, but overall, it's super yum. In fact, I'm gonna have another one right now. Have a little break, do some dishes. See you in a moment. All right, so it's time to make the second mock fish recipe. This one's coming from Utility Jude's video, and it's a little bit different. For this recipe, you will need 1 teacupful of mashed potato, only 1/2 ounce of ground rice this time, 1/4 ounce of margarine, and some anchovy paste or essence, or she suggests a pinch of mace. Again, we're just going to be using that sardine oil, 1/4 pint of milk, some browned breadcrumbs, and salt and pepper. So let's get to it. Okay, mock fish number 2. So I've just mixed up 1/4 pint of milk, which I'm going to bring to the boil. I have a feeling I'm definitely going to need to add some more liquid to this one, but I think it's going to be okay this time because we've got the mashed potatoes to help bulk it up. And I'm just going to add the remainder of the sardine oil. If I wasn't using this, it would just be a knob of margarine, some salt, pepper, let us stir. Okay, that's come to a boil, so we're just gonna add the rest of our rice. It's meant to be approximately 1/2 ounce. So the fish smell is really strong at this point. It just doesn't shine through as much in the finished result. So again, basically just want to cook this until it becomes a nice thick mixture. Now this one does require constant stirring because the rice will get stuck to the bottom of the pan. Did just add a little bit of extra water, probably about 50 ml. Heat is on quite low and I'm just going to keep on stirring until it feels like the rice is cooked. Okay, this has been going for about 10 minutes, but honestly I don't know how much longer I can keep it on the stove without adding some additional water. It feels like the rice is cooked. There are a couple of little chunks here and there which feel a little bit al dente. Okay, so I already boiled and mashed some potatoes and these have been sitting in the fridge so they're quite cool now. So we're just going to add our fishy, milky rice mixture to this. I turned my back for 2 seconds and the milk scalded on the bottom of my pan. Yay! Okay, so just going to mix this through. This mixture is nice and cold so I can assemble these straight away this time. Okay, so in Jude's video, she forms the fish fillet, then she coats it in flour, then she kind of dunks it in some very shallow milk before crumbing it. So I'm just going to grab some of this mixture and form a fish fillet. Little ones will be easier to handle. This is just wholemeal flour. Pray no rain. She said don't dunk it for too long, just very quick. Oh, it's already falling apart. Oh my god! Oh! What an oogie mess!
Well, isn't that an oogie mess?
That was like 1 second and it literally just kind of fell apart. I think I'm gonna have to tie my hair back because my dreads are going to dunk into that milk. Okay, success. We have one, but they are very fragile. Okay, next. This is the part that makes me nervous. Oh, shit. God damn it. Oh, God. I mean, it does work in the end, but you've got to work quickly, and it's a messy job. It's the crumbs that help it stick together again. Fillet number 2. I think we'll get 4 fillets out of this. Right, what if I make them a bit thicker to begin with? Okay, making them smaller to begin with actually helps because they expand quite quickly as soon as the milk touches them, but they're still very fragile. Last one, thank God, lock it in flour. I mean, of course, using egg instead of milk would work far better, I do believe, but we're getting there. 4th and final one, complete. Right, now nothing's going to go to waste here. I can use this milk even though it's full of crumbs, and I spilt some. And I can still use this flour and the breadcrumbs for my dinner as well. So nothing's going to waste. All right, time to fry. All right, let's try and get these onto the pan. Give them a swivel. I'm feeling a bit more optimistic about these ones with the potato. It's definitely a fun and interesting way of using different ingredients. I'm just cooking these on a low heat, slow and gentle. All right, let's try flipping these over very carefully. So far, so good. For the hassle that you have to go through to make these, I think it's actually worth it, just as a treat every now and again. But I would definitely make these the night before. Okay, time for the next 2. First impressions, these ones are easier to cook, but I don't think they're going to be as crispy as the other ones. We'll see. Okay, the last 2 are finished. I think these 2 are actually the best out of all of the ones that we made today. Time to taste test. Okay, I already had 2 before, so I'm probably not going to eat this whole thing. Okay, fine, I probably will. All right, let's try this without the sauce first. It does look like a fish fillet inside. Oh wow. The flavor of this one is quite different, but we did add seasoning this time, which definitely made it more savory, which I prefer. On its own, it's really nice, so I can only imagine what it's going to taste like with the parsley sauce. Again, the sardine flavor is not coming through as much as I would have hoped. I think in Courtney's video, she put in some fish sauce, which would work really well with this. That is properly delicious. It's actually hard to choose which one I like more, but just in terms of making them, I think I prefer this recipe. The other one had the egg in it, which definitely enriched it, but I don't know, I don't think I'd want to waste an egg on it when you could make something very similar that tastes just as good. Who am I kidding? I'm definitely eating this whole thing, which means I have 5 of these left, so I can have 1 for breakfast each day with some broccoli for the next 5 days. Yum. Now, for my lunches this week, we're going to be trying 2 recipes, one of which is extremely simple, which is great because the other one is probably one of the more complicated wartime recipes that I've come across so far. Not necessarily in terms of degrees of difficulty, it should be pretty straightforward. There just seem to be a lot of steps with this one, and as much as I'm looking forward to trying it, it doesn't seem very time efficient. So the first of our lunch recipes comes from
Good eating. Suggestions for wartime dishes.
So we're going to be making something called mushroom shortcakes. But first, a warning.
Now a warning?
This is a total ration buster. It's going to require my entire 4 ounces of margarine for the week and my entire 2 ounces of cheese. So I'll be quite annoyed if this turns out to be a dud. I don't think it will though, it sounds quite nice. So mushroom shortcakes. For the shortcake, you'll need 1/2 pound of flour, 4 level teaspoons of baking powder, 2.5 ounces of margarine, a saltspoonful of salt. I've not come across that description before, and 1/4 pint to mix. For the filling, we're going to need mushrooms. It doesn't specify how many, so I just got 500 grams, a knob of margarine, and then it just says cheese sauce. Again, it doesn't give me any quantities, it just says cheese sauce, seasoning to taste, and some grated cheese. Now, deeper into the book, there is a recipe for a foundation white sauce. For this recipe, you will need 1 ounce of margarine, 1 ounce of flour, 3/4 pint of milk. Oh my God, I just realized something. I'm blowing an entire pint of milk on this recipe as well. And I'm fresh out of powdered milk. I'm gonna need to buy some more powdered milk because that's what I'm gonna be living off this week. And then just add a little seasoning. But to make it a cheese sauce, it advises to add 1.5 ounces of grated cheese. So there we have it. It's my entire margarine ration. It's my cheese ration. It's most of my milk ration. The bloody hell was I thinking? I'm questioning every life choice that led to this moment right now. It's too late though. We've already got all of the ingredients and I've settled on this menu for the week. So let's get cooking. Okay, so I've measured out my ingredients here. I have 1/2 pound of flour, which is just 8 ounces. We have 2.5 ounces of margarine, 1/4 pint of milk, and I've added the 4 teaspoons of baking powder. As for the salt spoonful of salt, I looked it up online and apparently that's only 1/4 teaspoon. So I'm just gonna mix this together. And next we're going to rub in the fat. This is always my favorite part. Just want to make sure all of that margarine is evenly distributed and there are no big lumps in there. Next we're going to add our milk. Now I could easily just use water of course, but even though I'm blowing my milk ration on this, I want to try and stick to the recipe. Now the recipe actually says to roll it out and then form it into a round. Then we're supposed to bake it in a hot oven for about 25 minutes and then cut it in half. But I feel like that's going to be a big pain in the butt. It might not look like it, but this feels lovely and silky with the addition of that milk. So it's going to give this a roll. So yeah, what I was thinking of doing instead was cutting out smaller individual ones. I don't quite know how thick I should make this. Given how much of my rations I'm blowing on this week, I really want to try and make as many as I possibly can. All right, we're going to start with that size and see how we go. Because I think these will make a really great snack. Now I hope I don't come to regret this, but I am going to bake these on some pizza trays, just covered with some baking paper. I just really hope it's not another disaster like when I tried to bake the meringue on one of these trays. Remember that? You guys, what the f***? Okay, look what happened. This was the biggest disaster I have had in the kitchen for a long time. But yes, I can fit more on these trays. Just smush the rest of this together and roll it out again. So I have 21 cut out so far. We need to try and get an even number if we can. 22, 23. Actually, you know what? I've had an idea. Let's get creative. Okay, this step was not necessary whatsoever, but these are going to be the tops of my little shortcake. So I just brushed it with some water, and with the leftover pastry, I made some little M's for mushroom. I think they're really cute, but we'll see what they turn out like once they come out of the oven. So my oven temperature is currently at 200 fan force. It does suggest to cook these for 25 minutes, but I don't think they're gonna need that long, so I'm just gonna gauge it. So while we're waiting for the shortcakes to cook, we're going to start on our filling, but I want to make the cheese sauce first. So we're gonna start off by melting our ounce of margarine. And then just chuck in an ounce of flour. This is wholemeal. A bit of a stir. And then just start adding a little bit of milk at a time. Just keep whisking until it thickens up. I'm gonna add some seasoning, so starting with a teaspoon of salt, pepper, my alarm for the shortcakes. I reckon these are done. I think those shortcakes are done, so I'm just gonna turn the oven off and leave them inside. Next, we're going to add 1.5 ounces of cheese and just patiently wait until this thickens up. This sauce seems to be taking longer than I anticipated, so I am just going to take these shortcakes out of the oven. I can show you that. Ow, it's hot! Even though the oven's off, it's still quite hot in there, so I just didn't want to overdo them. The shortcakes only took 15 minutes. All right, it's starting to thicken up. I feel like it's taken its sweet time compared to other cheese sauces that I've made. I do want this to be quite a thick sauce. I mean, it's basically the consistency of a bechamel. I think I'm just gonna call it done and move on to the mushroom component. Now it's time to prepare our mushrooms. I've just got 500 grams here. So it advises to take the stalks off and cook them first, stewing them in a little stock, gravy, or milk. So I don't actually have any stock at the moment, and I sure as hell am not wasting any more milk on this recipe. So I think we're gonna go down the gravy route. I think those flavors will be a good match.
This match to which you have the presumption to aspire can never take place. Piss off! I have not been accustomed to such language as this.
Now it also advises to peel the mushrooms. This may be a little controversial to some people, but I never peel mushrooms.
I'm still living.
And because my mushrooms are quite small, it just seems like a super tedious task that I'm simply not up to right now. So we're skipping that step. Now gather round everybody, because the recipe also states that you can stew the mushrooms with some sliced onion. We are definitely doing that. You have to understand how happy I was buying this onion. Now we're only going to use half of it because I would like to savor some for another recipe at some stage. So I'm just going to start preparing all of the mushrooms. So now pop the stalks off. I think I may have overdone it on the mushrooms. Just chopped up all the stalks here and the heads there. Even if we do have too much, nothing will go to waste. So I'm just going to dice up half of this onion and then we'll start cooking. Okay, so I've just melted my last half an ounce of margarine. And we're just going to add the mushroom stalks and half of an onion. And just cook these down a little bit before we add the rest of the mushrooms. Okay, so I'm just gonna add the rest of the mushrooms. It's quite a lot compared to how many shortcakes we have. Don't forget to spill the mushrooms everywhere. That is part of the recipe. So I just wanna cook this on a high heat to help the mushrooms release all of their juices. And then once they do, that's when we're going to add some gravy powder. Now the recipe did actually say that once the mushrooms have finished cooking, you're supposed to strain out all the liquid and then use that liquid to make a cheese sauce, which makes sense if I was gonna be using milk or stock, but because we're using gravy, I didn't really see the need for that. Now that these have cooked down a little bit, I feel a lot better about how much filling we have. I don't think we've overdone it too much. All right, that's getting nice and juicy now, so I'm just gonna start by adding a tablespoon of gravy powder. Wish you could smell this, it's gorgeous. And now that we've added the gravy powder, I'm still cooking it on a high heat because I still want some of that liquid to reduce a little bit and the mushrooms to absorb all of that gorgeous flavor. Okay, I just spent the last 10 minutes cooking these right down, just until most of the liquid reduced. Now we need to bind it with our cheese sauce, which by the way, has thickened up quite nicely. I'm not sure if I want to use all of that, it seems a little extreme, but I was thinking about it, and whatever we don't end up using of the cheese sauce will actually work perfectly with the next dish. So I'm just gonna start by adding maybe a third of it. Let's just go half. Mix this through. This is what I was afraid of. It's become quite runny again. I haven't tasted this yet, but it smells amazing. I think what we're gonna do is let this cool down first and refrigerate it for a bit, just so it has a chance to thicken up properly and I can actually sandwich it in between the shortcakes. Okay, so I ended up just whacking the filling in the freezer for a little bit to cool it down. Definitely a lot firmer now, which is great. So now it's time to assemble. So we're just gonna spoon some of this on. Now I had half an ounce of my cheese ration left. The recipe said to grate it up and sprinkle it on top, but I don't want that to ruin the effect of our little end. So I'm just going to sprinkle just a little bit on the filling. And there we have a little mushroom shortcake. Okay, I'm gonna try my best to get these assembled, then I'm gonna pop them in the fridge, but not before we do a taste test. I'm really pleased with how these turned out. I think they look great. They were a pain in the ass to make, but hopefully the flavor makes it worthwhile. Now we've definitely ended up with a lot of leftover filling. I actually think this is going to be spectacular on my toast in the morning. So we're going to get a few breakfasts out of this as well, which is great. All right, it's time to taste. Okay, this one was the first one that I made, so it's all kind of smushed down a little bit. I have a feeling as soon as I bite into this, the filling's just going to explode outside the edges. But once it has a chance to settle down in the fridge, I think it'll be fine. All right, well, let's give this a go. Please excuse how messy this is going to be. That is so yummy. That short pastry, it's just like eating a Ritz cracker with a really gorgeous, rich mushroom dip.
These are the moments that make life worth living.
I love this. That would have been such a treat during the war. I mean, it is a treat now. Really enjoyed that. It was worth the effort, but I probably won't be making them again anytime soon, especially considering how much of our rations we had to blow on this recipe. But can confirm, that is a winner. Okay, so it's actually the next night now. A little peek into the window of filming cooking videos for YouTube. So last night, after I finished work and had my dinner, it was about 9:30. And I thought, right, I'm gonna film this mushroom shortcake recipe. It should only take an hour, maybe two. I didn't finish until 1:30 in the morning. Now there were some waiting times with that recipe because I had to wait for the mixture to cool down. I mean, a lot of the time I'm having to stop and do dishes in between takes as well, but it still puzzles me as to why it seems to take 3 or 4 times longer to cook something on camera than it would any other normal time. I don't know, I just work here. Anyways, I've got my jacket on tonight. I'm trying to avoid turning on the heater. I have to say, this has been one of the chilliest Melbourne winters I have experienced in years. I'm normally a big fan of winter, but this one is next level. Melbourne's just copping these constant Arctic blasts at the moment, which is making for a very frosty winter. So I'm actually looking forward to doing some cooking right now so I can take advantage of the ambient heat my stovetop and the oven are about to create. So the second and somewhat easier recipe for my lunches this week is something called a Welsh wonder.
I wonder.
And the ingredients are very simple. This recipe is coming from
Eating for Victory.
For this recipe, you will need 8 large leeks. If you're so inclined, please let me know in the comments whereabouts in the world you're watching from and how much leeks are in your area. Because here in Melbourne, depending on which supermarket I go to, they range from anywhere between $2.50 and $3 per leek. I need 8 of them for this recipe, which is why I initially decided to halve the recipe. I bought 4 leeks from Aldi and that cost me $10, but I ended up buying another 2 and I'll show you why in a moment. So yes, for the Welsh Wonder, 8 large leeks, some salt and pepper, and 6 tablespoons of grated cheese. That's it, except I've already blown my entire weekly cheese ration on those mushroom shortcakes. But we do have a little bit of leftover cheese sauce, so I think it's going to work out fine. Anyways, let's get cooking. Okay, so here are the 4 leeks that I purchased from the supermarket. But today, when I was out hunting and gathering for a specific ingredient for our dinner recipe, I trotted on down to the Queen Victoria Market, where I came across 2 of the biggest leeks I have ever seen. These are huge! Now, these were 2 for $5, and I thought, you know what, I'm just going to get them. I actually need to make some vegetable stock as part of my dinner, but my little kitchen scrap bag is only half full at the moment. So I'm going to chop up all of the green parts of these leeks to bulk up my stock. And these will give it a lovely kind of oniony flavor as well. So first I'm just going to chop off the ends, and then the heads. These are just so big. So I'm just going to put all of these aside for now and we'll come back to these a bit later. Next I just need to chop up the stems of the leeks. And once they're chopped up, you want to give them a really good rinse to make sure you get all of the dirt and sand off them. Okay, ever wondered what $15 worth of chopped up leeks looks like? Well, here it is! To be honest, I may have overdone it, but the recipe did call for 8 large leeks, and technically I only used 6. So literally all we have to do now is whack them in a pot with some boiling salted water, cook them until tender, drain them, put them in a baking dish, then you're supposed to sprinkle some salt, pepper, and cheese on top, but we're going to use the cheese sauce instead, and then whack it in a grill or an oven. It couldn't be easier. Okay, so I'm just gonna start adding them in now. These are probably gonna spill everywhere. Yep, they are. Oh my god, there's almost too much for the pot. Holy crap! How am I gonna cook these? I mean, I guess they'll cook down, but holy F-balls. Now I'm just going to pour some boiling water over them. Don't know if you can hear that, but the burner's being extra loud tonight. There must be a small draft coming from somewhere, but I don't know where. I'm just gonna chuck in a tablespoon of salt. Now I know I'm using the crappy, highly processed table salt. I am planning on switching to just plain rock salt, but this is just what I have on hand at the moment. Alright, let's see if I can actually stir this. Okay, so I'm just gonna pop the lid on, leave it slightly ajar, and then just let them cook down until they're tender. So I'll see you in a moment. Alright, so these have been cooking down for about 15 minutes now. They're nice and tender. So I'm just going to drain them now, but I'm definitely going to reserve the liquid so I can use it as a base for my stock. Okay, so I've drained the leeks. I'm just going to put them into an oven-proof dish. Such an awkward angle to try and do this. Just even this out a little bit. Next, just a sprinkling of salt, maybe a teaspoon worth. And some pepper. And this is the point where you would put 6 tablespoons of grated cheese. However, we don't have any, but we do have some leftover cheese sauce. So I'm just gonna pour this over the top. Spread it out a bit. I tell you what, I wasn't exactly sure what to expect from this one, but I think this is actually gonna be really nice. I guess you could technically call this done, but I am just gonna whack it in the oven for 10 minutes. Okay, so the Welsh Wonder is now out of the oven. I left it in there for about 15 minutes. It smells really good. Let's give it a go. It's actually quite juicy. It's quite nice. It's very simple. The salt level is on point. This would be a lovely, simple side dish for something. I really like that. Although I am glad that we also have the mushroom shortcakes to accompany this, just for a bit of crunch and some extra bold flavors. But overall, this is a perfectly fine dish, and I'm really glad that I reserved some of that cheese sauce. Given the general cost of leeks in Melbourne, this is not something I would make all of the time, but as I mentioned earlier, it really would make a nice side dish to accompany something. Success! Okay, so I've just chopped up all of the tops of the leeks, and we are just going to whack this in a pot with some boiling water with the rest of our veggie scraps and simmer it for around 45 minutes, and then we'll have a delicious stock. As for the rest of the kitchen scraps, it's mostly just potato peels and all of that parsley from when we made the parsley honey last week. So I think this stock is actually going to be quite gorgeous. Okay, so I'm just going to start off by adding these kitchen scraps first because they are still a little bit frozen. I just keep reusing the same bag over and over, so I'm literally just going to chuck this empty bag back in the freezer and then slowly fill it up with kitchen scraps again. Now we'll add the leek tops. Anyone else getting deja vu? and just top it up with some boiling water. Give it a mix. Now, whenever I make stock, I rarely add salt or pepper. I only add it to flavor the main dish which I'm using the stock for. Anyways, I'm just gonna let this simmer away for 45 minutes until it's done. So the stock's done now. I'm just gonna whack this in the fridge until I'm ready to use it tomorrow night. We've arrived at the part of the video that I have been dreading.
Oh God, I don't think I can do this.
Now, aside from my general dislike for the overall taste and texture of peas, I think part of the reason I hate them so much comes from my childhood. Mum and Dad were busy working full time and looking after 3 kids, but they always made sure there was a healthy, nutritious dinner for us to eat every single day. And I'm very grateful for that. And back then, a lot of the time, it was your traditional meat and 3 veg type of dinner, which frequently included what seemed to me to be a mountain of peas that I just couldn't get through. Now, they were nearly always the last thing left on my plate, because when it comes to eating peas, then and now, I simply refuse.
I refuse! Refuse!
Now, when I was especially young, bless my parents, they tried to hide the peas in my food, but they weren't fooling anybody. I Liam Neeson'd every last one of those little f***ers and picked them out.
I will look for you. I will find you. And I will kill you.
Now, there are a few exceptions, of course. I quite enjoy snow peas in a stir-fry or a delicious Thai green curry. I may even go as far to say that I could deal with eating freshly picked peas straight off the vine, but that one's a bit What I especially dislike is this stuff. Bags of frozen peas. And you should know that this bag marks only the 2nd time that I have purchased frozen peas in my entire life. Now, I know they're supposedly frozen at their peak freshness. Blah, I don't care. I just don't like them. And don't even get me started on canned peas. Especially mushy canned peas. Now, at this stage, you may be wondering, but Jake, if you hate peas so much, why on earth are you making pea pod soup? Because I had a bit of a revelation recently. We're almost 8 months into this ration challenge, and so far, I've kind of cherry-picked the recipes that I think either sound interesting or know there would be something that I would enjoy. Now, given the rationing period lasted close to 15 years, there's no way that people would have been eating exactly what they wanted to all the time. And when faced with either going hungry or eating something that they didn't particularly enjoy, I bet they picked their stomachs every single time. In addition to this, because I live in an inner city apartment and I don't have a garden, I can't grow my own. So I actually follow a lot of gardening and allotment channels on YouTube and have total garden envy. But it got me thinking about what would have happened back then if I had tried to grow my own and for whatever reason it was a terrible harvest. Maybe everything got slugged or it was terrible weather and the only crop that I could yield anything from were my peas. I would be making damn sure that I'd be utilizing every edible part of that plant that I possibly could to feed myself and my family. So that's why when I came across a recipe for pea pod soup, I thought, you know what? We're going to give this a go. So with all that in mind, it's also something I'm going to try and incorporate into future videos, just to try and push myself a little bit harder and incorporate ingredients that I would normally run a mile from. I've just got to try and push through these psychological barriers. Now, I can't say too much about this yet, but there is something in the pipeline that's going to make eating pea pod soup feel like I'm floating on a cloud of fairy floss and stuffing myself with all of my favorite pizzas. But more on that in a future video. Once again, this recipe is coming from
Good Eating. Suggestions for wartime dishes. A new selection of Daily Telegraph readers' suggested recipes.
For this recipe, you will need 1 pound of pea pods, 4 ounces of peas, 1 onion, sprigs of mint, half an ounce of flour, a teaspoonful of sugar, 2 tablespoons of milk, a knob of margarine, some salt and pepper. Now, this recipe actually suggests that you make dumplings to go along with it. However, the dumpling recipe that they provide also calls for 1 reconstituted egg. Now, this technically isn't a problem for me because I do have a little stockpile of eggs available to use, but I've already used 1 at breakfast time and I don't want to be using 2 eggs in every episode. We used 2 last week, and providing I don't change my menu plans, I think we're going to need 2 eggs next week as well. But yeah, for the most part, I would like to try and stick to 1 egg per week. But never fear, because I actually found a recipe for oatmeal dumplings, which I thought would be an interesting addition. And the recipe of which comes from
Food facts for the kitchen front.
So for oatmeal dumplings, you will need 4 ounces of medium oatmeal, 4 ounces of self-raising flour, 1 ounce of grated suet or dripping. Now we're going to be using the last ounce of butter that I have left of my rations this week to make these dumplings. Herbs suitable for flavoring, and then underneath it, it actually suggests some minced onion. I think we can give that a go. And last of all, some water for mixing to a stiff dough. Now, just one other thing that I need to mention here. This recipe calls for a pound of pea pods, and I could not find fresh peas in the pod anywhere. And believe me, I literally tried everywhere. And do you know why I couldn't? Because they're not in season. I'm the most smartest.
Get a picture of that. Most smartest.
Come on.
Now, I could have just simply changed the dinner recipe, but I'd already bought all of the other ingredients and filmed and edited my intro. So I hope you don't mind, but I ended up doing the next best thing that I could think of. So I purchased a bunch of sweet peas instead, just to substitute the pound of pea pods that I'm supposed to have for this recipe. I know it's kind of cheating, but we've just got to make do with what we've got.
Here. Enough jabber.
Anyways, enough chatter. Let's just get this over and done with. Honestly, I've been psyching myself up for days leading up to this. I think I finally reached a point of acceptance though, because it's like
coming face to face with your worst nightmare. You're facing death.
So, let's get cooking. Okay, so while I'm waiting for my stock to heat up, I thought we'd get a head start on the dumplings. So in here, I've just got 4 ounces of self-raising wholemeal flour, 4 ounces of oats, the last precious ounce of my butter, and a little bit of salt and pepper. And as the recipe suggested, I'm also going to add just a little bit of diced onion. So maybe, I don't know, a couple of tablespoons worth. I've also had to put my jacket on again because it's quite cold tonight. So give that onion a bit of a mix through. I've never had oatmeal dumplings before. Now we just want to rub the butter through the mixture. Same as we've done a million times before. Just try and make sure it's evenly incorporated. Okay, I'm just going to start gradually adding in a little bit of water at a time. A little bit more. Damn it, I think I've added too much water again. These are quite pasty. Oh well, we'll see what happens. And then once again, just form them into little balls. There we go, some little oatmeal and onion dumplings. All right, time to crack on with the rest of the soup. Okay, so this is the stock that we made the other night. Looks like I didn't strain it very well though, because there's still some remnants of leek and parsley in there, but oh well, I guess it'll give it some extra flavor. Now I am going to be altering the method of cooking this recipe ever so slightly, and here's why. The recipe says to wash the pods, put them into a saucepan with sliced onion and mint with just enough water to cover. Bring to a boil, simmer gently until tender, drain, and then rub the pods through a sieve.
Ain't nobody got time for that.
Then return the puree to the liquid. Now I'm sorry, but I will not be pushing these pods through a sieve. We're simply going to be using an immersion blender. So I'm just going to go ahead and chuck these in. And the peas. The rest of our onion. We've made one onion stretch pretty far this week. We're also supposed to add a few sprigs of mint, so I've just picked off the leaves and gave them a quick wash, so we'll just add those in as well. I have all this mint left over too, so we're gonna have to find a recipe for next week's episode to make sure we utilize as much of this as we can. I'm just gonna give this a bit of a stir. Oh my god, you guys, it smells like peas. Oh, I think I'm having a PTSD attack. Oh god, this smells vile. Anyways, I need to bring this to a boil until the pods are tender, and then we can do the next step. Okay, this has been boiling down for about half an hour. These pods are taking quite a long time to soften up, but I think I'm just gonna try and see if I can blitz them now and see how we go. Meanwhile, my entire freaking apartment smells like peas. All right, let's see if I can whiz this up. That worked pretty well, actually. All right, next step. Next, I'm supposed to make a little slurry out of the flour, milk, sugar, salt, pepper, margarine, but we don't have any margarine or butter left, so I'm just gonna skip that step. Now, this is actually the leftover flour and milk from when we made the second mock fish recipe. Just gonna chuck that in. I don't think there's gonna be enough milk to make a slurry, but we'll see. A bit of salt. We also need a teaspoon of sugar. Let's stir, see how we go. Yeah, I'm definitely gonna add some more water to that. I should have just used some of the soup. I also have these leftover toasted breadcrumbs from the mock fish, so I figured might as well just chuck them into the soup, right? It's just gonna help thicken it up a bit. Now, I know this is not finished yet, but this looks vile. Let's add in our little slurry. Stir that in. You know what, I am just gonna add the breadcrumbs. Why not? Now I'm just going to turn the heat back on. Damn it, I just realized I should have kept those breadcrumbs and sprinkled them on top, kind of like a crouton when I was serving. It's done now. All right, we're just going to pop in our little dumplings. Hopefully they stay together. But if they don't, honestly, this soup can't look much worse than it already does. So apparently these dumplings are going to take about 30 minutes to cook, so I'll see you when they're done. Okay, this has been cooking down for half an hour now. In total, this has been on the stove for a full 60 minutes. It's thickened up, and I think the dumplings have held their shape pretty well. I have not tested this for seasoning or anything yet, so the time has come to taste this. Okay, fresh from the pot. It actually doesn't smell too bad once I added the oatmeal dumplings. It seems to have taken away that awful pea smell. All right, here we go. That is salty. I can live with this. It actually doesn't taste like peas. It's an interesting flavor that I can't quite describe. I just realized partly why I'm probably getting that big hit of salt is because when we were cooking the leeks, I salted the water and then we put that into the stock, I think. I'm gonna have to review the footage. I won't know until I edit that part, but I think that's what's going on here. I can't really taste the mint in it, but I'm sure it's adding to this peculiar flavor. Anyways, let's try a dumpling. Good texture, but the sausage dumplings were far better. There you have it, guys. Pea pod soup with oatmeal and onion dumplings. To be honest, I probably won't be making this one again, but as a one-off, it's actually quite nice. I think I'll probably get 4 dinners out of this, and I'm okay with that. Bon appetit. I lied. Turns out I wasn't okay with eating pea pod soup for 4 dinners in a row. In fact, by the 3rd and 4th evening, dinner had become a rather somber affair that I had come to dread. The more I ate it, the more I hated it. When it comes to my long fear and loathing history with peas, I'm gonna give it a miss. But to be perfectly honest, I'm not sure using sweet peas was the right move in this particular application. The soup was salty and kind of sweet at the same time, with a hint of bitterness, and I definitely didn't season those oatmeal dumplings well enough, at least for my liking. Nonetheless, you win some, you lose some. We gave it a crack, and that's what counts, even if I did cry myself to sleep every night afterwards. Anyways, let's break down some costs. Mockfish recipe number 1 was quite economical, coming in at a total of $1.41, not including the parsley sauce. Mockfish recipe number 2 was a little bit more expensive because we use potatoes, and we pay a fortune for fresh produce in Melbourne. But even still, it was pretty cheap, coming in at a total of $2.01. Now, the parsley sauce only cost $1.36 to make, so once we combined both mockfish recipes and the parsley sauce, it came to a grand total of $4.78. And that was enough to give me 8 individual mockfish fillets. But I also served it with a side of steamed broccoli, so it cost me $4.22 for 2 heads of broccoli, which is almost the entire cost of both mockfish recipes and the parsley sauce put together. So that brought my breakfast total to $9. Now, I got 5 breakfasts out of that because I ate 3 of the mockfish fillets as soon as we made them, so that works out to be $1.80 per serving. Moving on to the mushroom shortcakes. This was hands down the winning recipe of the week. Yes, it cost me a bulk of my rations, but it was worth it. That pastry was so light and crispy, it honestly felt like I was eating Ritz crackers. It was Ritzy.
Bet your ass it's Ritzy.
No, I'm not gonna lie, I demolished all of those in 2 days, and I regret nothing. I ended up just pulling them apart and eating them like crackers and dip, and it was so yummy. And as you saw, I did have a lot of the filling left over, so I actually just put that on my toast and had it for breakfast for 2 mornings, and it was super delicious. So yeah, the mushroom shortcakes cost me $7.14 to make. The cheese sauce only cost $1.53 to make, but we only used half of it, so that came to a total of 76 cents, bringing our shortcake total to $7.90. And then we come to the easiest recipe in the video, which was the Welsh Wonder, which also turned out to be the most expensive. Thanks to $15 worth of leeks, including half of the cheese sauce, the Welsh Wonder came in at a total of $15.84. Now, I have a few things to say about this Welsh Wonder. First of all, my apartment reeked of leeks for a good 5 days, and even though it was in a sealed container in my fridge, every time I opened it, it was just like a leek bomb exploded. And the second thing is, this one kind of defeated me. As I mentioned earlier in the video, this would be a great side dish. It's quite simple and basic in terms of texture and flavor, so to sit down and have it on its own just as a meal in itself eventually overwhelmed me. So on day 5, I still had half of it left, so I decided to repurpose it and I turned it into a lovely, thick, rich leek and potato soup instead. And I'm really glad I did that because I think I'll probably get 4, maybe 5 lunches or dinners out of that. Last but not least, we have the pea pod soup. The soup itself came in at a total of $8.75, and the oatmeal dumplings only cost me $1.20 to make, bringing the total to $9.95. I paid $10 to torture myself. I got 4 regrettable dinners out of that, coming in at a total of $2.48 per serving. So even though I didn't like it, it is pretty economical. So the grand total of everything that we cooked in this video came to $46 $43.46. Not too bad for a week's worth of food. I mean, technically it's probably just a hair above that because I did turn the Welsh Wonder into a leek and potato soup, so I'd essentially just need to add in the cost of 3 potatoes. It's felt like a whirlwind episode. Also, I probably needed a swear jar for this one. I do apologize, but sometimes you've just got to say the right words at the right time. It's therapeutic. Now, before we wrap up, what I think is going to be my longest video to date, I'm sorry about that. It was an accident. I really didn't mean for it to be so freaking long. But before we go, there are some very special shout outs that I would like to make. From the bottom of my heart, thank you so much to Gara Lady. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. I apologize if I'm not. And also Miss Kim Benner. Thank you so much for your very kind and thoughtful super thanks after I posted my last video. It was extremely generous of you, and it was such a lovely big surprise when I woke up those 2 days to see them. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Mwah. And thank you so much to everybody else who has left me a little comment or liked the video, subscribed. It really does help to keep me motivated and keep going. So let me know if you end up trying any of these recipes and what you thought of them. And until next time,
keep calm and triguna, McCoyties, Tricorum satis D.
Filigree, apogee, pedigree, perigee.